Hello, welcome to episode 19 of Press YYZ. This is a safe space. We normally get together every week and talk about video games amongst a group of fun-loving Canadians. But this week is not normal. Tonight, we're going to be discussing why Black Lives Matter. Point blank. We're here to listen, we're here to learn, we're here to be better. I'm your host, Mitch George, joined today by Alex Balant.
Hello, everybody.
AJ Fraser.
How's it going?
Alexander Kazina.
Hello.
And Nathan McInerney.
Hey, guys.
How's everyone feeling today?
We're in a bit of a paradox right now.
Yeah.
We are a podcast of 5 straight white males, and we are expected to both speak up and speak out against the wrongs in the world, and at the same time we are expected to step back, shut up, and listen. And I think tonight we are going to do our best to do both.
Yeah, the majority of our episode tonight will be listening to other people who have had experiences in their day-to-day lives of living as black people in America and dealing with all of this unjust police brutality. There's no better way to talk about it. It's awful. I hate seeing it. It makes me want to cry. It makes me want to scream. It makes me want to fight. And I'm not a confrontational person. So we're going to spend the most of our show tonight listening to other people and their experiences. For those watching us live on twitch.tv/PressYYZ, for our audio listeners, we'll be sure to send out the link to what we will be watching once we finish, saying our piece, which is the latest episode of the Spawn on Me podcast, a wonderful show hosted by Khalif Adams, where he had 5 wonderful guests on, and they talked about, the show is titled A Lesson in Blackness, and that is what we're going to listen to today, because we need to be better, and we can use whatever platform we have to signal boost those who have experienced this, who need us to listen, and we need to learn to be better people. Point blank. Nathan, Kozi, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like there's really much else to be said here. We were very, forthright before we began this episode in, making sure that this came across as, serious and genuine, and that we didn't want to use this as an opportunity to degrade into our usual wacky shenanigans. And yeah, I think that right now this is one of those moments where we just need to take a step back and listen to the experiences of others, and suppress any need to kind of like insert our own funny / snide / inappropriate remarks.
I would love if tonight we could have had a show that was us being goofy and fun and talking about all the things we love about video games. It's the reason we started the show, is to get together every week as friends to just talk about fun stuff. But the world is in a place where we need to do our part to not take away from the conversation that's going on right now in the world. Most focused in the US, but it is a global issue. It's a human rights issue, and I hate it. I hate seeing this. I hate that we have to do this, because this shouldn't be the way the world works.
Yeah, and I think our sort of goal, and what has been said a lot, is to just amplify these voices that aren't as well off to be at the forefront. And it's about the conversation and keeping it going, because we don't want it to just fizzle out like it has, unfortunately, in the past, because this is a continuously recurring problem, and it's just about, let's make it real. Let's keep this conversation going for real this time.
My biggest issue this week is talking to my kids about it and trying to have them understand what's going on, because I think it's important that kids are aware about what's going on, and that the conversations happen, so that we can learn and grow from this, because I think ignoring it or not talking to them about it is just not they need to be aware, and they need to understand why this is happening so it can stop. And the sooner we do that, the better it'll be. be, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I myself have had some interactions with family and friends on social media, and it seeing conversations degrade into what I'm saying is right, no, what I'm saying is right, and it's all this confrontation and people just wanting to be angry because of what's going on right now, and trying my best to be a positive light in those conversations and talking about the fact that whatever is going on in terms of, casually dropping racist remarks on Facebook or just in passing conversation, like, those things are wrong. It's ingrained in us as human beings to talk in stereotypes or to assume a lot of things based on the color of someone's skin, their race, their nationality, their gender, and none of that is right, and it is not the way that I want to I've even caught myself over the last week saying things that I don't mean it to be racist, but it ends up being that because it's just a part of, people's upbringing or the way that the people around them act and behave, and that action and those behaviors are wrong, and it has to stop. I had a really, 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 really good conversation with my mom last night after all this Facebook drama went down, and we talked about when I was a kid, she got a phony $20 bill out of an ATM and went to a convenience store, and they laughed about it, and she went and tried to use it somewhere else. She couldn't use it there, and she ended up going to the back to the bank to turn in that phony bill. And with the situation that happened in Minneapolis, if my mama had been black, she may have been arrested, and if that had been my dad, he might be dead. And no one deserves to go through life having to worry that any foot, any toe out of line is the difference between life and death from a group of individuals who are there to protect and serve. We're paying our taxes so that they are there to protect and to serve us. And I couldn't imagine living my life in fear of people that I'm paying to protect me potentially doing harm to me or anyone that I care about. It's not right.
While we're taking a moment to reflect on our own privilege, more recently, if you really think about the timeline of events, when we recorded last week's podcast, George Floyd was dead. That had already happened, and we were continuing on like normal. Like, oh, it happened again, another one of those things. And it took a lot over the weekend for all of us to come to grips with the reality that, yeah, it happened again, and that's not okay. And to not just lay back and let it pass by again. That's one of the things that caught me off guard in the shower today. Like, holy shit, wait a minute. When you put it all together, we continued like normal. And we cannot do that anymore.
And I see a lot of discourse online. Canada must be looking down on the U.S. like that meth lab in the basement. But these incidents aren't isolated to the U.S. There have been incidents in Canada of Indigenous women going missing with no evidence. There have been incidents of unnecessary police brutality towards Indigenous folk, towards black people, towards... It's not isolated. It's not an American problem. It is a global problem, and it's something that I personally want to be better at reflecting on my own behavior, my own beliefs, and doing my best to be a better person in identifying any of those biases in myself. And also, I'm tired of sitting back and being the pacifist when it comes to these things. I've always been the peacekeeper. Fuck that. There's nothing peaceful about this. We have to have the hard conversations with people that don't want to listen, because if one person overhears me arguing with my racist uncle who lives in Florida sometimes and thinks differently because of it, That's an absolute win.
Yeah, I just want to, add to that and say that, moreover, even if, this is an event happening in another country, it's being perpetrated by, different laws and regulations and, systems of abuse and power, that doesn't mean that, we shouldn't get involved. I think that if you, see a means to get involved in some fashion and, voice your concern and, just any way at all to kind of like make an influence, you can't stand on the sidelines. You kind of need to get involved and you need to take action in some fashion. And, what we're doing on this podcast right here is, it's certainly not the most insane masterstroke that's being made right now to combat the systemic issues that are plaguing our society. But it is certainly more than if we had just decided, let's just not do a podcast at all, or let's just barrel through and do a normal episode of Press YYZ.
Silence is the biggest enemy to this movement. If we continue to remain silent on these issues, then it's just going to be another black man murdered by the police. It's not going to cause systemic change to fight for what is incredibly difficult circumstances for anyone having to live through this. It can't be like Alex said earlier. It cannot just be another black man killed by the police. It can't. I'm sick of it. Yeah. So I think with all of that being said, we don't want to take up too much time. We do want to get to our topic of the show, which is the Spawn on Me podcast. So we're going to do things a little differently today. We're going to do a social plug now and wrap up the show and move over to that podcast. For those listening, we'll be sure to link that out. It'll be in the description and it'll be shared out on our social media platforms. But for the time being, we're going to give our social plug to people of color who we really aspire to be more like in this video game industry and who make us better people and who are great people in their own right. So AJ, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. T1J on YouTube is not necessarily a video game content creator, but a black content creator who puts together these very well reasoned and very well articulated videos that dumb, ignorant white guys like myself can easily digest. And that in itself is a racism issue. The fact that I am drawn to somebody because they don't speak that way, they speak this way, or whatever, is something that in myself I am trying to reconcile with. And I just want to give this guy a shout out because he deserves every click and every view possible. The next person that I want to shout out is because, listen, if we need to stay true to ourselves, and for this I need to stay on brand. This guy is a PUBG Stadia streamer. His name is QBZ24. He streams both on Facebook and on Mixer. On Mixer, he is just QBZ, or QBZ, if you will. And then the last name that I want to mention is Austin Walker. Austin Walker, I first learned of him when he joined Giant Bomb back in 2015. He was there for about a year, and he really helped elevate the content on the website in a way that in a way that enhanced my outward perspective. He most notably, I believe, so before he joined Giant Bomb, did a very good criticism of Battlefield Hardline, which is a Battlefield game about cops. So that is an article which we should probably look into a a little bit more. But he's also does a podcast for Waypoint Vice called Waypoint Radio, and I absolutely highly recommend you check that out.
Thanks, AJ. Alex Balant.
So I don't have recommendations for online content creators, but there's a couple of films and filmmakers that I would like to shout out. Just these are extremely powerful movies that I think back on a lot, that I really enjoy, and I think everyone should watch them. So any of Ryan Coogler's movies, you might know him from, he directed Black Panther, he directed the Creed, he directed Fruitvale Station. I think he's one of the best working directors today. I think you can learn a lot from watching any of his movies. There's The Last Black Man in San Francisco, written by Jimmy Fails. He also stars in it himself. It's a very artsy movie, and I think it's an emotional ride throughout the whole thing. There's Barry Jenkins' movie Moonlight, which won Best Picture in 2016. I think it's one of the best movies of this generation. Any of Jordan Peele's movies, which being Get Out and Us. Sorry to Bother You, which is a movie that I can't say much about because it's so off the wall insane, but in the best possible way. It's directed by Boots Riley. And then The Black Klansman, directed by Spike Lee, which should have won in 2018. And that's all the movies. But there's quite a bit more that if you wanted to. And any of these filmmakers' filmographies, you should definitely look into.
Thanks, Alex. Kozi?
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to two different content creators. The first is a content creator by the name of Player Essence, aka OJ. He is a huge fan of Nintendo and a whole host of other video game varieties and brands. He has a YouTube channel at youtube.com/PenNintendo, P-E and then Nintendo. Right now, he in fact is streaming and discussing Nintendo's recent statement on Black Lives Matter, and also recent news like the Sega Game Gear Mini. So if you missed us talking about the news today, go over to his YouTube channel and see what he has to say instead. And the second person that I want to highlight is Brianna Reeves, who basically was recently brought on to be Gamer's second writer. For those that don't know, Gamers is the YouTube channel I write for. We recently decided to go out and hire a second writer to kind of like balance out our workload. And most recently, she produced the video for us, The Controversial History of L.A. Noire. And I gotta say, she really pulled through and produced an exceptionally great first video for our channel. Like, the quality of that video compared to the first video that I produced for Gamer years ago is just night and day. She's excellent right off the bat, and I'm really looking forward to all the things that she's going to continue to do for us in the future. She also has written for publications like Geeks of Color and PlayStation Lifestyle as well. And you can find her on Twitter at twitter.com/piratebl_r. That's PIRATEBL_R. I also retweeted one of her tweets recently, so you can find her through there as well.
Yeah, we're going to be sure that all of these content creators and filmmakers are going to be referenced in both the show notes here, in the description of the show, as well as when we share out this episode, we'll be sure to highlight those creators. Nathan, do you want to share next?
Yeah, so part of my creators I'm sharing are some of my personal interests, but people that I found, and like they're in the gaming space. One of them's in the gaming space, but Up, Down, Down with Austin Creed, Xavier Woods in the WWE, does a lot of great gaming content. It's more Let's Play with WWE superstars, but I always enjoy his content, and I think it's worth watching. And you can check him out on YouTube at Up, Down, Down if you search for that. The second one is actually a person I discovered from the Survivor community. His name's Bryce Isaiah. He was actually the third person voted out in the 28th season Kagayan of Survivor. But since then, he did a lot of appearances on the podcast that I listen to, Rob Has a Podcast, to a point where he now has 43 episodes of his own podcast called the Purple Pants Podcast. And it's not about Survivor necessarily. They do talk about Survivor sometimes, but it's just about his life in general. I know this week they did touch base on everything that's going on a little bit. But it's worth checking out. Always entertaining, and a great viewpoint. And it's from not just a person of color, but also a gay person of color. So,
Thanks, Nathan.
no problems.
And the creator that I want to shout out is one I've actually met quite recently. It's a streamer that I discovered while in quarantine and while the world is at its worst. He always is such a positive force on Twitch, and every time I jump into his streams, it just makes me happy. He writes poetry, he writes music and performs, and he streams games. He is just a phenomenal human being, and that is Kit_man22 on Twitch. So now that we're hitting sort of the end of the social part of the show, does anyone have anything they want to add before we end the audio portion and switch over to Spawn on Me? Okay. Anyone have anything else they want to add on this topic, or we can sort of intro the Spawn on Me episode and the audio? Okay. So what we're going to be doing now for our Twitch audience is we're going to be showing the full episode of A Lesson in Blackness from the Spawn on Me podcast. For our audio listeners, we will be sure to link that out for you. This is a very topical discussion put together by Khalif Adams, who runs Spawn on Me. His guests include Blessing Adeoye Jr. of Kinda Funny, Paris at Vicious696 on Twitter of Gamertag Radio, and then Zombie Kills and Pikachu Lita, both Twitch streamers, as well as Cam Hawkins, the cinephile guy. And they will be able to say much more on this topic than we do, and they deserve this time rather than us. So with that being said, let's listen, let's learn, and let's be better to one another. Thank you.